Welcome to ESI Advanced, how to create captivating PowerPoint presentations that inspire action. My name is Bill Whitley. I'm the author of the book Attractor Engager, Art of the Rainmaker, and I'll be your lead instructor for this workshop. So I'm excited to share with you how to create captivating PowerPoint presentations that inspire action. Before we dive into this preview, I have a question that I'd like to ask. And my question is, what percent of the presentations that you attend each year would you describe as particularly effective or insightful? If you're like most people, the answer you'd give is 20%. Now, if 20% of the presentations are good, that means 80% of the presentations you see are bad. So the challenge that we all face as presenters is that you have to cross the valley of irrelevance. So you're here, you're on one side, your audience is on the other side, and between you is this huge valley. And by most people's math, 80% of the time, the presenter falls into that valley of irrelevance. So if you want to cross the valley of irrelevance, the best way to cross it is with a bridge. I call it the presentation bridge. It has 5 key parts. First is a grabber open. The grabber open gets the audience's attention and lets them know why they should listen and where the presentation is going to go. Then is a relevant story, a story about a client that had a challenge where you helped with a brilliant solution and they got great results. Next is the main body of the presentation, and I simply suggest that you pull that relevant story, the main character of that story, pull them like a thread through the main body of the presentation. And then finally, it's time to close. So I'd like to give you an example from our last Pfizer Animal Health Advanced Presentation Workshop. One of the participants was Sheenan Nolan. He's a therapeutic specialist for Pfizer Animal Health. And so he started his presentation on this slide. And after the workshop and going through the presentation and reworking it with the presentation bridge, Sheenan started out and said, "You know, I've noticed something interesting. We live in such a fast-paced age and everybody's so busy, and the busier we get, the more people appreciate convenience." And he said, you know, at Starbucks, he said, I could make my own coffee, but I go to Starbucks and I get a caramel macchiato grande, and I pay $7 for a cup of coffee that I could have made myself, but I appreciate the convenience. And he said, the other night, my wife and I were sitting on the sofa and we were going to watch a movie, and we went to pay-per-view and we bought a $5 movie. He said, I'm embarrassed to tell you that just 2 minutes up the road is a Redbox. I could have gotten the same movie for $1, but it was convenient, and so I was happy to spend $5. Well, the exact same thing applies to animal health. And Sheenan said, you know, I recently called one of the veterinary doctors that I work with. His name is Dr. Cox. And I said, Dr. Cox, I know you like Convenia and you prescribe it for all your cats, but I'm wondering why you don't prescribe it for dogs. And he said, Sheenan, we both know Convenia is too expensive to prescribe for dogs. And I said, but Dr. Cox, what if it was your own pet? What if it was your own dog? What would you prescribe? And he said, well, I'd prescribe Convenia. And he said, Dr. Cox, would you do me a favor? On the next 10 patients where Convenia would be a good prescription, would you mind prescribing that for them? So he called me a few days later, and my cell phone rings. I look down, it's Dr. Cox, and before I can even answer, he said, Sheenan, 8 out of the 10 customers where I prescribed Convenia said yes. And he said, that's great, Dr. Cox. And he said, but Sheenan, one of the pets was a Great Dane. I said, Dr. Cox, if you don't mind me asking, how much did Convenia cost for that Great Dane? And he said, Sheenan, you should know better than anybody else. You can't put a price on convenience. Then Sheenan dived into his presentation and he said, so it gives me great pleasure to tell you more about Convenia. One of the things that Dr. Cox liked the most is that you control the dosing. It's an antibiotic injection. So as the veterinary doctor, you control the dosing. And then he talked about how many pet owners have all the great intentions of getting the medicine into their pets, but the pets don't like it and they spit it up. And so with Convenia, 1 shot lasts 14 days. Then Sheenan wrapped up by simply saying, my goal today was to share with you that your customers want and demand convenience. And my hope is that you'll prescribe Convenia and give them exactly what they're looking for. So what Sheenan did, he just used that simple speech bridge to develop his presentation. First was a grabber open. He said, I've noticed an interesting thing. As we get busier and busier, people value convenience more and more. And then he gave a couple of examples, and then he shared a relevant story. He shared his story about Dr. Cox and how when Dr. Cox tried prescribing Convenia, the results were fantastic. Then he dove in and said, so it gives me great pleasure to tell you more about Convenia. And he would simply weave Dr. Cox through that presentation by mentioning Dr. Cox's reaction to the product. And then finally he closed by saying, my goal was to share with you that your audience wants convenience, and my hope is that you'll prescribe it so that you'll be giving them exactly what they're looking for. So one of the gauges that I use when I review a presentation, I call it the insightometer. And on the insightometer, all you want to do is ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how much insight are you delivering to the people you're talking to? And what I liked so much about Sheenan's presentation was that it was just dripping with insight. When I think about it, the first thing, I loved his observation. I've noticed something interesting. As we get busier, people value convenience more and more. Then next, he used an outside example. He said, just in my own life, when I go to Starbucks or when I'm renting a movie, I appreciate convenience. Then he said, it's the exact same thing with animal health, and he tied that benefit to animal health. Then he said, Dr. Cox, what if it was your pet? Which one would you prescribe? I think that's such a brilliant question. And finally, he said, could you do me a favor? On the next 10 pets, next 10 dogs that could use Convenia, would you prescribe it for them? And just see what kind of response you get. So in the ESI Advanced workshop, we work on several pieces of your presentation. The very first thing that we do is develop a relevant story. There's 5 key parts of your story, and we'll walk you through exactly how to develop a powerful, relevant story. Next is the grabber open. The open comes from the story. The best opens are questions or comments or observations, and they give you a glimpse into where the presentation is going to go. But they also answer the question, why should I listen? Then we'll work on your close, a power close. So here's the presentation bridge, and the only last piece is the main body of the presentation. So we'll help you build a better body. So one of the things that you're looking for is how to bring your PowerPoint to life and delight any audience. There are 4 things you'll want to avoid. The first thing to avoid is something I call the danger zone. This is a typical example of how a conference room's set up with the LCD projector, and you're standing there and it's kind of hard not to get in the way of the projector. So I recommend you remove that chair, move it down to the end of the table, and that lets you move up and out of the danger zone. There's 3 other things to avoid, and we'll discuss those more in the workshop. There's 5 things you can strive for to create more visual simplicity. For example, use meaningful shapes and captions and builds. If this was a presentation about the sales cycle, you guys probably know there are 4 key phases of the sales cycle. Step 1 is the preliminary phase. Step 2 is discovery. Step 3 is demonstration of value. And step 4 is gaining commitment. In step 1, we're qualifying and building rapport. In the discovery phase, we're doing research and asking questions. In demonstration of value, we might be sharing stories or presentations or evidence. And then finally, in gaining commitment, we're closing and overcoming objections. So my question for you is, which of those 4 steps is the most important phase of the sales cycle? And the answer is discovery, step number 2. So what you just saw is a build. I actually clicked 10 times. So there's a lot of information, so I want to bring it on 1 step at a time. And step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then I ask a question. Which phase is the most important? And I'd let my audience guess. Some people might say closing or opening. Say, actually, step number 2. And the second I click, step 2 lights up. So by using a build and meaningful shapes, it'll help you keep your audience focused on exactly what you want them to focus on. There's lots of other types of simplicity that you can create, and we'll cover those in the workshop. One other quick example, lots of times you guys have to present charts with lots of information. One of the things I do is simply put a red box around the column that you want them to focus on, and then you can have a call out, like, look at these interesting results. And by doing that, you'll never skip, you'll never forget. Just let PowerPoint do what it's best at. So in the workshop, I'll share 3 other ways to bring more visual simplicity to your presentation. The question you should ask yourself is, are your slides simple and visual and easy to understand? So to help you create more visual slides, I'd like to share what I call the shape of things. So if you had one main point, the shape of one is a circle. And so I'd simply have a circle, and I'd have that one main point in the circle, or I'd have the one main point right under the circle. What's the shape of 2? Well, of course, it's 2 circles. The shape of 3, 3 circles. Shape of 3 might also be a triangle. Shape of 4 is a quadrant, and I'd have my 4 main points in the quadrant or outside the quadrant pointing in. Shape of 5 is a pentagon or a star. And if you get to 6, I'd go with slices of a pie. 6 or more would be slices of a pie. And you can say, there's 6 key things here, point 1 and part 2 and part 3 and 4, 5, and 6. So all the workshop participants will receive this PowerPoint that I'm showing you right now. So you'll get all of these shapes that you can use to make your presentation, to make the main body more simple and visual and easier to understand. Next, I'll share 3 things. As a presenter, you want to become one with your PowerPoint, and I'll share 3 key elements that'll help you become one with your PowerPoint. So there's the presentation bridge, and how to open and share a story, pull the thread through the main body of the presentation and close, and we'll even help you build a more simple visual main body of your presentation. There is a pre-workshop assignment. And the pre-workshop assignment is to think about possible relevant stories and be ready to share one with the class. As you can see, this class, we're building a series of building blocks, so it's critical that you come ready with a story. Now, your story is going to get much better, and we're going to work on it, but you need to come ready with one story that we're going to build your presentation around. So to help you find your ideal relevant story, think about these 3 things, or at least ask yourself these 3 questions. Question number 1, which client thanks you the most? Question number 2, which client faced the biggest challenge? And question number 3, which solution that you developed for a client are you the most pleased with? Ask yourself those 3 questions, and it'll help you find the ideal relevant story. So again, I'm Bill Whitley. I'm excited about having you in ESI Advanced, and I'm excited about helping you create captivating PowerPoint presentations that inspire action.